Lucky to Be Here is a podcast that showcases the lives and experiences of those who took the leap to build their lives and careers across countries. They share their stories, lessons, and advice to show us what is possible and what it takes to be an international student and professional. Because there is a lot that goes into building your own path one day at a time. We're more than just lucky to be here. I'm your host, Dr. Analia Gomez Vidal, and I know what it takes because I have been there myself. Now, I coach and mentor international graduate students and professionals navigating life and career transitions across industries and countries through my company, AGB Services LLC. To learn more about how I can help you move from doubt and overwhelm to taking action with clarity and confidence, visit agbservicesllc.com. Stay until the end of the episode for a special treat, too. Welcome to Lucky to Be Here. I am really glad you are. I am very excited to welcome Gisela de la Villa. Gisela is a multi-hyphenate who hails from Argentina, but has become a part of the Wellington scene. She works in the tech space and is involved not only in that realm, but also everything related to performing arts, dogs, and where to get a good hot chocolate. She can speak lots of languages and also laughs at your jokes. She has done a lot of things despite being young, because being under 40 is young. And she's an expert at multitasking with a smile on her face and a song in her heart. Gisela, welcome to Lucky to Be Here. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Analia. I have to say, I really do feel lucky to be here. So nice to be in the space.
Lovely to hear. So, for those of our listeners who don't know you, tell us, what's your story?
Well, my story is, as part of my bio, I was born and raised in Argentina. I am from one of those Argentinians that have a melting pot of European descent, but you will find that the biggest influence there is Italian, shockingly. And I was born and raised in Argentina, grew up there. And in 2015, my partner and I decided to move abroad because why not? And among other, we looked at different places and we chose New Zealand. And I have now been here for 10 years. I'm a New Zealand citizen. I have a house. I have a dog. Life is good.
Nice. So, fully adjusted to the Kiwi way of living.
100%.
So, to get us started in that journey, we were talking before starting recording about, the analytical approach to making the decision to move. And I am very curious to hear, in that process, when your partner and you are in Argentina, figuring out what the next step might look like, walk me through what that looked and felt like to you both.
Well, that's a funny story. What I like to tell people is that we decided to move because our lease was expiring. And so, of course, you don't move houses, you move countries. So there is a bit more to that. A bit of a backstory. I am from Buenos Aires, and my partner is from Paraná, which is the capital of the Entre Rios province. So those two cities are 500 kilometers apart. After being some time together, we decided to move in together because long distance is hard. And we moved to Buenos Aires, which he was really excited about because he used to visit for music concerts, to see me, etc. And then he realized that visiting Buenos Aires is not the same as living in Buenos Aires. So Buenos Aires is beautiful. I love it. It can be a bit chaotic. And so when our lease in the apartment that we were renting expired, we decided to make a call on where to go. We essentially had a few options, either moving somewhere else in Buenos Aires, which my partner was not thrilled about, moving to his hometown, Paraná, which I was not thrilled about. And then so our other options were to go somewhere else in Argentina or go somewhere abroad. So we did consider going south to like Bariloche for a while, but then we thought, we're young, we're free. I mean, if we want to, we both wanted to live abroad for a while. So if we're going to do it, now is probably the right time. And so after that, that's when we made a call. Okay, great. Let's move abroad. But the world is large. So how do you actually choose a country where to go? Both him and I are quite analytical, and we like making lists upon lists, and actually, like rating things. We do that for just about everything except choosing each other. we do list upon list, and so we thought about what kind of life we wanted to have, and we thought about what things we liked and didn't like of the options that we had discarded. So, in order to choose our next country, we took a few parameters into consideration. One of them was population density. Buenos Aires is too crowded. We didn't want a place that had that many people. Landscape variety. Banana is beautiful, but it's like quite far from the sea. And Argentina in general is really large. So if you want to change landscapes, you need to drive for at least 5 hours. Which to all of our European friends listening, they will know that is unfathomable. um, we also looked at job opportunities, visa opportunities. We looked at the inflation rate for the countries that we were looking at. Um, and we also looked at the climate. We both knew that we didn't want to endure 45 Celsius summers anymore. So we looked at a place that didn't get that hot, but still wasn't like incredibly freezing. And yeah, we put all of that together and we chose New Zealand. Yeah.
Thank you so much for walking us through that thought process. And what I love the most about your description is that this is a conversation that I have a lot with clients and mentees and during workshops about thinking about what is it that you want to gain from that next step in whichever country that might be, and thinking about whatever country you want to go next from that perspective of how does this align with what you want for yourself and your lifestyle and all these different elements. So I love that you gave us such a clear example of what that looks like. Even I'm imagining the type of dashboard that you guys had as you were kind of like rating each of these parameters across countries. Um, so let me move you slightly into the emotional side of this, because what I am very curious about in your description is, like you were in between Paraná and Buenos Aires within Argentina, and then thinking about some areas in Argentina and then abroad.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you look at the globe, there is a long, long distance between any area in Argentina and New Zealand. So what was that like for the two of you when, after crunching all the numbers, you were like, New Zealand might be the place in terms of the emotional side of that decision?
Yeah. I think at the time when we first decided this, we didn't really realize how long distances were. To us, it was an adventure. We didn't plan to be here 10 years, you know? We thought, oh, well, we'll maybe try to apply to a working holiday visa, go abroad for a year. Spoiler alert, we did not get a working holiday visa, but we'll get to that later. Um, and, you know, obviously now it's 2025. COVID came and went. But before COVID, planes exist. You just didn't think that you might be stuck abroad in a country that's like quite far away from home. So to us, it didn't really feel far. It's like the whole world is so vast and yet so small. And I think there are specific situations when you do realize how big the world is, and some other situations where it just doesn't matter. Um, I think here is where our upbringing and our family situations started to show, though. because we made the decision together and we wanted to tell our families at the same time. However, his family was in Paraná, my family was in Buenos Aires. So we both had to have those conversations alone with our families. And my parents have always encouraged me to explore. They've always wanted me and my siblings to move abroad. To be honest, I think they had wanted to move abroad themselves, but their circumstances didn't quite happen. But they've always wanted us to be international children, you know. Whereas in my partner's case, uh, his family is very much local, all living in the same place. A few of them haven't really left the country in their lives. And so, to me, communicating our decision to my family was a lot easier than it was for him. So, my family was really receptive and they were very happy when I announced that we were moving abroad. Uh, his family was a bit less impressed. They did warm up to it eventually, but initially they were like, but you have job security here. What are you going to do? What happens if you don't find a job? And I think that's a very important thing to plan for. So we all move abroad hoping that everything will go well, but it doesn't always go well. So it's good to have a backup plan in your pocket that you know you will probably not use, that you hope that you will never use, but you still have that security and you know that you have something in the life to come back to. In our case, the way we did that is we bought our plane ticket with a return date of like 3 months after, right? So they said, we'll go to New Zealand. If everything goes south, we'll be back in June. That's it, right? And that gave us the certainty that if, for example, we moved to New Zealand and one of us didn't find a job, then we could just call it a holiday and go back home and you know, like be easy. But at least we had a ticket home. So we wouldn't be like stuck in New Zealand without being able to return. And as everything went well, we just decided to change the date for that return ticket and come back home for Christmas. And that was the happy turnaround of the safety net and plan. New Zealand is quite far away, but if you move abroad, everywhere is far away. Because if you want to find tickets to come back home, even if a place is close by, it might not have availability for when you want it. It might be prohibitively expensive. The times might not work out. And yeah, when it matters to be close, everywhere else is far. So I think New Zealand in that sense isn't further away than any other foreign country.
I appreciate you saying that because it really does speak to the immigrant experience, right? Like when we decide to go abroad, no matter how close you are in terms of kilometers, like you're still feeling that distance when those moments happen. And so, on the flip side, you also mentioned how, in some ways, it's also apparent how small the world is in some cases. What is one example of that for you?
To me, one example of that is, well, the fact that I still remain connected with my family and my friends. We all text all the time anyway. And if I'm being frank, when I was living in Argentina, I was seeing my parents maybe once a month, like once every 2 weeks if I was being a good child, you know? Um, and so that goes to show if you move abroad and maybe you're lucky enough to travel back home every year, you're actually not seeing them that much less than you were before. Because you text every day, you do phone calls, there's video calls, and when you travel back home, you actually spend quality time, an intense period when you're just there for your family or or not. I mean, you can choose how you go back home or if
Okay.
you go back home. But in my case, I love my family. And so I love going back and visiting them and spending time with them. And so when I go back to Argentina, my family is my priority. And I love my friends too, for all of those you hearing. Um, but my friends need to adjust to my family schedule
Mhm.
because I like, if you want to see more of me, you can always come visit me, right? So, so that's one way that it's apparent that actually the world is really small. We still interact every day in pretty much the same way that we were before. And the other situation when you see that the world is small is when you run into people. New Zealand has this thing of the 2 degrees of separation.
Mhm.
So between any person in the country, there you know them through another person. That goes for anyone. I'm pretty sure that I must have a 2 degree of separation with former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, like it's like everybody knows someone. And and the craziest thing was when I moved to New Zealand and it turned out that a friend of a friend who lived in Queenstown was actually the brother of one of my best friends in Argentina. And I was like, okay, the world is really a napkin, as we say in Spanish.
Indeed. Um, and I will say, coming back to, the many ways in which like you stay in touch with your family, even more so than when you are there. I have made that case, like that point to my family. My mom is not thrilled with that to this day, but it's very much true that in some ways, through the being in touch and also like the technology that allows for that, to be able to get my weekly voice message from my almost 90-year-old grandma, just being like, "Hey, Annelie, I'm checking on you." Um,
Oh, grandma.
those are gifts that we don't necessarily have in the same way when we are there, because we don't see them the same way or they're not part of the same habits that we develop. Um, one thing that I do want to come back to also, related to, making that decision and following through with it, is
Hmm.
you walked us through how you guys decided to make the move and go to New Zealand. And I love
Hmm.
the way that you described the setting that ticket for 3 months later, because best case scenario, you change it and that's what happened. Worst case scenario, it was a long vacation. We tried it. We like figured out what was possible and was not. We came back. But there is another layer to that, which is, well, the best case scenario is a longer term scenario that
Yeah.
you would have to prepare for in some way. So, what was it like for you guys to prepare for that international move?
Well, there were two factors that really affected that. One of them was the sheer amount of stuff we had because we were already living independently, right? So
Mhm.
it's not like we were living with our parents and we could leave our bedroom as is. Mom, I promise I will actually clean up that box of things that's still in my bedroom eventually. We maybe on year 20, let's talk about that. But we still had a lot of things to get rid of. We had a fridge, we had a bed, we had a
Mhm.
table and chairs and dressers. Um, so on one hand, there was the personal possessions, right? What do you do with all that? Um, Obviously, we also could use the extra cash for the move, so we decided to sell most of it and just give away to friends and family whatever we couldn't sell in time. Um, but since we were also like still lucky to have our parents in Argentina, we also left a wave two batch of things to bring with us on successive trips if everything went
Mhm.
well. So first we moved with a suitcase, and what we had on, enough to survive for like say a first year.
Mhm.
And then when we saw that everything went well, we went on the next trip and we started bringing a few more things. We personally didn't relocate with furniture. I know that a lot of people do, but we didn't because we figured it would be like quite expensive. We were not married to the furniture. We thought we can just like figure it out and buy new furniture once we've moved. Um, but the rest of our possessions, we just like left what was important with our parents, moved with a suitcase each, and started bringing things as we went. Now, I know that is not an option for everybody, but I wanted to share what other options could be because I do have friends who have then moved from New Zealand to other places. And so they have been like multi-time migrants.
Yeah.
So there is a different option, which is to use storage locations. There are long-term storage options that really allow you to leave a subset of things. If you are planning on eventually returning to the country, or you don't know if you will, um, putting things in a long-term storage is a really good option because it's quite affordable. Um, you know that your things are there under 24-hour security. They're being looked after. And if you ever decided to not come back, then you can hopefully you still have some connections in the country. You can ask one of your friends to sell things and get rid of it. But that is an option for people who don't have like family or friends who can hold on to their stuff. Um, but yeah, I feel like I missed half of the question.
No, I think like you cover the key part of it, which is when you're thinking about making a big international move like this one, but you're thinking about it with while embedding certain flexibility into it the way that you guys did, of thinking, well, let's test the first 3 months but then see how long we can go. What I love what you offer in terms of thinking about, well, either preparing with family and kind of like thinking about this staggered way of moving, and or this alternative of thinking, okay, who is in the country who can facilitate that locally, to then maybe have like a local storage that can like where you can keep some of the stuff while you're also figuring out what your next move is. If you were to, like think about your next move
Hmm.
from New Zealand to wherever else, whether that is like back to Argentina or anywhere else in the globe, what, if anything, would you do differently this time around?
Hmm, that's an excellent question. Um, Obviously now it's a different move because we have our dog, and so figuring out what to do with that is different. Um, what I would do is what I would do is just like check prices for relocation companies. Many people are lucky enough to have their job pay for a full relocation package. That was not my case. I was lucky enough to have a visa, and that was it. Um, but if your job already pays for a relocation package, make the most of it and actually relocate properly. But I would probably choose what honestly, I would probably still do about the same.
Hmm.
There are things that you become attached to and that are valuable to you on either a sentimental or just like a sheer effort point of view. Like your laptop, you're probably going to be moving with that because it has a lot of information. It took a while to configure. Um, my guitar, right? I know that some people would sell their guitar and buy a new one. I wouldn't because it has a history, and so I would be taking my guitar with me. But then, for example, my standing desk,
Hmm.
I don't think I would be taking that with me, and I definitely wouldn't be taking my car with me. I mean, I would definitely sell that. Um, yeah. I think when it's time to move, the things that you remain attached to are the things that have an emotional value,
Hmm.
either an emotional or a this is way too much hassle value. Um, in a nutshell, anything that is irreplaceable. If you have something that's irreplaceable, make a plan for taking it with you and see which of the options is most affordable, most convenient, etc. If you have stuff that is replaceable, honestly, I mean, I guess check what's more effort, whether to buy it new or to take it with you. But yeah, I still wouldn't take a lot of my things if I moved abroad again.
I like that as you're describing it, something that comes to my mind is a little bit of what shapes our mentality as people who have had to move around places, but not just any place, but across countries, which is there is the sentimental aspect to certain things, but you're also kind of like forced to narrow down that sentimental part of yourself, which I know is very present in me. Um, and you have to kind of like make those tough decisions of like, okay, what is the thing that I'm definitely attached to that is worth me going through all of this exploration of how to bring with me? And
Yeah.
what can I leave behind and replace eventually or be okay with?
Yeah. I'm
And Mhm.
actually curious, what is one thing that you what was one questionable choice that you decided to take with you?
Interesting. Um, so for me, it hasn't played out the same way yet because when I moved with 2 suitcases, and that was it. And my first apartment here was a half furnished one. And so for the most part, I had the basics. I remember that I the first day that I arrived, my mom had included in my suitcase, in one of my suitcases, uh, a pair of utensils,
Well,
a plastic glass, a plastic plate, and a can of tuna.
oh, mom, that's so sweet. Also, possibly illegal.
um, and so basically, it was kind of like her way of making sure that when I landed, I had the essential to feed myself when I was already in that apartment.
Oh,
And I
that's
think that there
incredibly
is
sweet. I love your mom.
I think that that is, like a sentimental thing that I would carry with me for sure. I think it would be much harder now because, like you say, there is an element of over a decade later, there is a lot more that I have built here that I don't know how I would feel leaving behind or not, but that
Mm,
it's a constant question in our minds as we're thinking about, either relocating or dividing our time, which is something that I have had to do in the past of being, I've spent a few months in Argentina and a few months here, or every few weeks being back and forth. And so it forced me to think about my life in a way where like I needed to be more nimble to, like
mm,
move around. So one thing that is related to this conversation but it's not a fun topic for most people,
mm-hmm.
is the paperwork that allows for all of this to happen. And so earlier you mentioned how you ended up not having initially a work and travel visa. So tell us a little bit about what the process of the visa trail for you guys in New Zealand was this
Yeah.
past decade.
Um, well, first, I would like to preface that with getting a visa is a creative process. you know, it's there are many ways to establish yourself in a country. So, if your goal is to move to a specific country, then I would encourage you to look at a lot of avenues. Um, but yeah, so we started with what we thought would be easiest. and we tried to apply for a working holiday visa. So we did a lot of research for that. We looked at groups like Show Me Animo Yours. We looked at the requirements. We looked at the application dates, what information we would need to have ready. We prepared our credit cards to be ready to pay for the fee, because in Argentina at the time, this was a big issue, having to pay things in international currency.
Mhm.
All the credit cards had a limit that was just way too small for what you needed. Um, so it was a whole preparation. And so we got ready, set up to apply for the working holiday visa from our apartment in Buenos Aires. And no matter how prepared you are, destiny has something different in store for you. Working holiday visas in New Zealand have different vacancies per country. There is a list in the Immigration New Zealand website, so if you're ever thinking of going to New Zealand, I do encourage you to go and check that and see what visa options they have. But for working holiday visas, depending on the country that you come from, there is a limited set of vacancies. And so for Argentina at the time, it was 1,000 vacancies for a country of 54 million people per year. That's the vacancies per year. So applications open on X day at X time. And it's a rush. It's a mad rush to the finish line. And as much as I love New Zealand, the technical infrastructure is sometimes not the best. So we spent literally 2 hours refreshing the Immigration New Zealand website, being told that the site was down. It had crashed because so many people were accessing it. And by the time we actually got through, there were no visas left. So we were very prepared. We connected really early, and we spent 2 hours refreshing like mad people without actually getting anywhere. Obviously now, after so many years and chatting with different people, we know that there are some tricks around that. But for us, we were we already had a plan. We knew we were getting a working holiday visa. We knew we were just going to do it. And then we missed out. So we were a bit shocked for a minute. But after that, we said, okay, let's see what other visa options we have. And of course, we thought that working holiday visa would be the easy one. And if you do get through, indeed, it is very easy.
Mhm.
But since we missed out, we needed to start looking at other options. We saw that there was a skills shortage list in New Zealand. And those are the skills or jobs or professions that have easier benefits when applying for visas.
Mhm.
So both my partner and I work in IT. I'm a software engineer. He's a systems engineer. So luckily, that is usually a sought after profession.
Mhm.
We can get into how we chose that profession another day, but also a lot of planning went into that. And so we went into that skill shortage list, and we realized that that was possibly something that would help us. But still, you needed to have a job offer. Actually, there was a talent visa option back then. Everything changed now. That is probably my other hot tip. If you want to move somewhere and you see a visa that you can apply for, just apply for it. Because immigration rules and the available visa options change all the time. So if you can apply to a visa now and you know that you will want to apply for it, you should just do it, because otherwise you don't know if that visa option will be available later on. Anyway, I got a bit ahead. Back to the story. So we couldn't get the working holiday visa. We decided that we needed to look for a job. And so we started looking for employment so that we could hopefully get a sponsored visa to move to New Zealand. And here's where things get interesting because my partner and I had two very different approaches. We were, of course, working together, but we had two different approaches. Um, he started going through all of the job listing sites and reaching out to people, reaching out to job ads. And that was quite difficult because he would usually get a response saying, hey, we really like your skills, but we are not sponsoring people at the moment. So if you're ever in New Zealand and you have a visa that allows you to work here, let us know. We'd be happy to chat. And he's like, well, I am messaging you because I want you to give me a visa. So obviously, I do not have a visa to go to New Zealand to work for you. So that was a really challenging path. I took a different avenue, which was to reach out to my extended networks and just put some feelers out and ask, does anybody live in New Zealand? I'm I'm wanting to move there. I want to hear what life there is like. And also, if you have any good job connections, that'd be nice. And so I ended up having someone who's now one of my dearest friends. Yeah, Emily. So shout out to Emily if you're listening. Um, my now good friend Emily said, ah, you work in IT. We love IT people in New Zealand. Yes, let's chat. And so we had a great chat. She asked us why we were wanting to move, what we were looking for. And she wasn't working in IT herself at the time, but she had a friend who was working at a small digital agency. And so she sent my resume and a brief description to her friend. And her friend said, hey, we are like not strictly looking for people, but we're always open to, great humans. So let's chat. And yeah, she introduced me to the founders of the company she was working for. And we had one of the most amazing interviews I've had in my life. And they said, yeah, great. Just let us know what papers we need to fill and we'll support you. I do acknowledge my privilege and I do acknowledge how lucky I was. This was not this was not an overnight change. Building those networks takes time. When I was in uni, I really love extracurriculars. So I decided to get into organizing the South American Business Forum, which you will be familiar with, Annie. And through that network, I got connected to other networks of people who were going to international student business conferences. And through that, another network that was a broader network that connected everybody from every network. RIP network ever after. But I just put a message there. But it's not like I just jumped into a group. If you jump into a migrant group, everybody's wanting to migrate and everybody's in the same situation as you are. So yeah, you could get some help from people who are in the same situation as you, but that might not be the most effective way of forming your connections. The people that I reached out to were people who were educated, people in a similar situation as I from a professional point of view. I reached out to networks of people who were like-minded, who had this international mindset of actually, like making a global impact. And so that is what I found gave me the leg up when it came to actually moving. We sometimes make the joke with Emily that she imported me into New Zealand. Obviously, not the only factor deciding how I moved, but you have higher trust through the endorsement of people who already hold trust. And so forming a trust and connection with somebody who already lives in the country where you want to move is an incredible tool. Well, tool in the best of sense, right?
Mhm.
Um, especially in New Zealand, which is such a small country, uh, you get most opportunities through your networks rather than through official channels. So nourishing your networks, reaching out to people who might be unexpected. They don't need to be your lifelong friend. If you are part of a same network that already gives you some trust in their eyes. And yeah,
There are two things that are very powerful of what you are mentioning. I will say also shout out to the South American Business Forum, which is where we met almost 20 years ago.
oh my God,
Um,
almost 20 years ago. Yes, indeed. It was that long ago.
and it's like to anyone who's listening and might be interested in this type of experience, the South American Business Forum is a student-led conference for students in college where 100 participants across countries come in for a 3-day weekend in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And you go through a series of panels and discussions around like key current events in social, political, economic topics. And so, in many ways, for all of those who have been part of that experience, whether that was as participants and staff or volunteers after. And I know, to this day, I have been even, around just keeping an eye out on jury duties and stuff like that. Um,
Same.
I I cannot recommend this type of experience enough because it is tremendously enriching in terms of hearing other perspectives, engaging in discussions, and really thinking about today and kind of like future looking scenarios. And so that's one part of it that I think it is important for anyone listening who is interested in kind of like building their own sense of what's possible. That is an amazing resource that has been powerful for both of us throughout our lives.
It is invaluable because it really broadens your perspective. When you're going through uni, you're always thinking about the next exam, the next paper, the next assignment that is due. And when you do something like attending one of these international student conferences, you suddenly like meet so many people from many different places at so many different stages of their career. And it really shows you what an actually powerful platform going to university and getting education can be, because it's not just about the knowledge that you get, because we all know that the internet is there for that nowadays. It's about the connections that you form, the people that you meet. It's about the networks that you build by going to college. So yeah.
And I will say also, if you're listening, but, you're not in Argentina or, attending a conference like this one is not accessible, look into what other student led conferences, groups, opportunities are there that can help you build, like, have similar experiences. And the other thing that you mentioned that I think is tremendously powerful for anyone listening, whether you are, in college or grad school or beyond, is building that network before you need it, which I think that is a key part I repeat it constantly that networking is not so much about like the one off or transactional interaction, but rather expanding what's possible for you through expanding that community that you can learn from and interact with consistently. And what I am hearing from your experience is once the decision was made that like New Zealand was the next space for you, and you then decided to go the job searching route to move there, then you had a set of people that you could tap into so that either they would help you or they would connect you with others who help you so that you can build that trust that you highlighted as part of your response.
100%. I would add a small caveat into this whole thing, though. Um, Building networks is very important, but also when you are building networks, it's important for you to remain genuine. You will see so many people with thousands of LinkedIn contacts, and those are people that they have never met in their lives and people that they couldn't reach out to if they needed something. So it's important when building networks that you actually do it from a genuine place because you're interested in connecting with other people and not because you're seeking something. The way networks work, or at least the best way I found them to work, is that you first have to give in order to take. People are a lot more inclined to help you and do things for you if you have done things for them. And again, this is a way of like, we're saying this and it sounds like we are very calculating people. We are not. um, it's more about the basis of human respect and reciprocity. Um, so if you genuinely give to a community, the community will see you as one of their own and will genuinely give back.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is how the cycle works. The more you give to the world, the more it gives you back. And the same happens with your networks.
100%. So we're not, I know we're at time almost. So I have two more questions for you. The first one is, we started the conversation by referring to your adjustment to the Kiwi life. So I am curious to hear from your perspective, what is your favorite thing about life in New Zealand?
Um, well, actually, you just made me chuckle when you started introducing the question because I do have quite a few funny stories about adjusting to life in New Zealand. But let's go to the question itself. Favorite things on one side, obviously, the beautiful landscapes. So growing up in Argentina, all of the personality quizzes are like, "Ooh, do you prefer the mountain or do you prefer the sea?" And living in Wellington, I'm like, why not both? Right? Because yeah, in Wellington, you live on a mountain by the sea, you know. um, People would call it a hill, though. But I mean, we come from Buenos Aires, so that is really like any hill is a mountain. Um, and so I really love that I can, especially in Wellington, because I know that it's not the same in every city. Especially in Wellington, I love that I can wake up and go for a walk to the stream or the river, or I can grab my bicycle and go to the sea. Or I can just like walk 20 minutes and I can do a bushwalk, you know? So I really love how compact it is and how you can reach so many beautiful landscapes really, really quickly. That is one of the reasons why we moved, and I still stand by that. I love the scenery, the landscapes, and just being able to be by the water. Um, Another thing I would say I really like about New Zealand is just like how generally nice people are. You know, it's a nice country. It's nice. very chill. You have everything you need, but also it all goes at its own time. People are very kind, very relaxed. The pace is so much slower than in Argentina, and I imagine that in the States as well. Um, and yeah, life is just peaceful here. Life is good. I think that's probably one of my favorite things here.
And luckily, throughout our conversation, you dropped multiple gems about how to go about the process of joining you in New Zealand. um, before we wrap up, though, one last question for you is if you were to meet that version of you in 2015 that was about to move to New Zealand with that ticket that had a 3 month later return just in case, what would you like that Gisela to know?
I think I would probably like her to know that things will happen. They will happen for good reasons. And I would like her to know that as long as she is following her north, she will get there. When you're evaluating options, you know how you feel about the option. And I am both analytical but also a bit intuitive. And if I can see that I'm feeling uneasy about something, I know that I need to dig into that and I need to really inspect why. Um, and I would also like her to know that no matter how well you speak a language, accents are a thing. And it might take a bit longer to adjust to both accent and culture than you think. And so finding a way of adapting while remaining genuine to your true nature is a process. And it's a process that can only be achieved through time. It will not happen overnight. It will not be easy, but it will also not be as hard as people with a lot of fear make it seem. And so if you feel like you want to do it, then you just should. And you can always go back if you feel like it's not for you. But yeah, to pass Gisela, I would say just probably learn some Te Reo Maori before you move. That would be my main advice. But yes.
Thank you so much for your time today and for sharing so much about your story. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the time, Analia. I wish we could have 2 hours or 3 to talk even more because I feel like I have so much more to share. So yeah, if you or anyone listening has any questions, yeah, feel free to drop me a line and I'll gladly talk about moving to New Zealand for hours and hours.
We'll include the information to reach you on our show notes, and I may take you up on it for our members in the AGV lab too.
Beautiful. Let's do that.
That is the end of today's episode, and as a thank you for making it this far, here is a special gift. You can use code LUCKY26 to get 20% off when you subscribe to my coaching membership, AGV Lab for Career Explorers. You can book your call to join it using the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening to Lucky to Be Here. I am your host, Dr. Analia Gomez Vidal. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening and leave us your review. You can also get our updates and resources for career development by subscribing to our weekly newsletter visiting agvservicesllc.com. See you next time.